thank you for tuning in to the writer behind the song Black Music Month edition. This is the second time we're doing this panel. Last year we did it during Hispanic Heritage Month. This year we're doing it during Black Music Month. And we're super excited to have our panelists having this conversation. We thank each of you for tuning in. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome today's moderator onto the screen. Janishia Jones, please join me on screen.
Hello.
Welcome. So
Great
Janish, no, thank you. So let me give you guys a quick rundown on who this superwoman is. Janishia is a member of the Recording Academy class of 2022. She resides in Los Angeles. Janishia has led a decade-long career in the independent sector of the music industry as a data analyst and music publishing expert, working with companies such as SRC, Universal Motown, E1, Co-op Music, and Empire. As the owner of Fresh N Sassy Productions, Janishia has created an ecosystem of safe spaces and established a series of initiatives aimed at empowering women of color in the music industry, including her Pub Royalty Queen podcast, where she interviews women of color about their experiences navigating the music industry. Janishia's research on that called A Seat at the Table, a perspective on women of color in the music business, provided the industry with its first data-driven analysis on intersectionality, and her extensive network and outreach has led her to become a social activist, offering solutions to create more equitable opportunities and driving meaningful change for people of color in the music industry. So first of all, I appreciate you for collaborating with me on this panel, Janishia. As you know, we've been talking for some time now, and we finally made it here. So thank you for everything you've done, and I look forward to the conversation.
I appreciate you, Jay, for putting this together, and the MLC for inviting all of us to have this very dynamic conversation. I'm excited.
And I know I didn't say who I was, but I'm Dave Bogan, head of third-party partnerships at the MLC, where in my role, I organize a number of culture programs, including this one today. So I'm gonna let Janishia take it from here and introduce our panelists.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. Why don't I just have all the panelists join us and we'll get started. Perfect. Hello, ladies. Welcome to Writer Behind the Song, Black Music Month edition, hosted by the MLC. We're grateful to have you all here today. You might hear a little bit of noise in the background. I'm doing this from the airport, but I will be muting as we go along so that we're not distracted by the background noise. With all of that said, why don't we take some time to get to know one another? Let's do a brief introduction, your names, what you guys do, and to add a little spin to this, a question that I ask guests on my podcast is, share with us your mama I made it moment, and what characteristics do you attribute to having reached that point? Stephanie, do you want to go first?
Sure. Can y'all hear me all right? I am Stephanie Jacques. I am an artist and a songwriter here in Nashville, Tennessee, but I am from California. I am a California girl through and through. I write country music, soul music. I used to tour background singing. And I would say my mama I made it moment was I sang at the Grammys. I sang background at the Grammys, and I couldn't believe the show that I had watched for my whole childhood. I got to be there, and it wasn't, I used to say it was because of luck, but I always say luck is because of the work I do. Like the more I work, the more I put myself out there, the luckier I am. So I worked pretty dang hard and found myself there, and can't wait to go back. It's gonna happen.
I love that. Tell us about some of the folks that you've worked with in your career.
I have worked with Tyrese. I worked with Joss Stone. People don't know that. Raphael Sadiq. I write here in Nashville with Madeline Edwards, Cassidy Pope, and a lot of indie country artists and indie soul artists like John Tucker and Alex. So it's a pretty wide variety of people I work with, from top tier labels to people just starting out.
I love the element that you're bringing to the table is, Black female songwriter in a space where we're predominantly, disenfranchised from, and yet the originators of, right? So country music is obviously a huge genre, and we're grateful to have you in that space. So what about you,
Thank you.
Latashá?
Hi, everyone. I'm Latashá. I am a world builder and music artist. I also am the head of community at a Web3 NFT protocol called ZORA, dedicated to supporting artists and finding sovereignty and autonomy in their creativity. I have been making music for about 10 years, all independent. Everything in my journey has been about how can I cut out the middleman and get direct to my fan and supporter straight to me. And beautifully, I found the Web3 space during the pandemic, became the first woman rapper to bring music to blockchain and the first to bring music video to blockchain, because I wanted to disrupt the music industry and disrupt social media. And so my mama, I made it moment was when one of my music videos that was living on YouTube for a year, that wasn't supported by a label I was working with, ended up making $50,000 through an auction in Web3. And I felt at that moment I had disrupted what I was worried about, which is always money wounds and values for the artist and the creative. And so I am really proud of that moment. I'm proud that in a summer I made what a record deal would have given me without giving away my copyright or masters. And so I'm happy to be here and talk more about that.
Absolutely. Again, Web3 space is like brand new to a lot of people. So to see that there's a Black female artist successful in that space and able to make money in that space, that's amazing. So thanks for sharing. But what about you, Tami? We saved the superstardom for last. I know a lot about you already. We're sitting in the game, but
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear about your journey.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Janishia. So happy to be a part of the panel. So for those who don't know me, my name is Tami LaTrell. I am a multi-platinum Grammy nominated songwriter. I started in the business over 20 years ago as a writer, and that forced me into understanding my copyrights. And so I have since evolved from a creative. I actually launched the Mezzo agency, a full service music publishing administration company here in Atlanta in 2018. We have since actually moved over and kind of expanded our business model from just publishing admin to now music administration. So we handle everything from song registrations, of course, royalty collection, but also registering copyrights, setting you up if you need to have a publishing business entity set up and so forth. The clients that we currently represent are K-Camp, Kim Burrell, Travis Malloy, a plethora of other songwriters and producers who produce for Wizkid, Future, Gunna, Queen Naja, Madonna, the list goes on and on. So I am just grateful to be able to transition from a creative to now helping other creatives be able to collect their royalties and not give up their copyrights. And to date, we have distributed out over $850,000 in royalties, and we have another distribution coming up. So I'm happy about that. My mama, I made it moment was getting the phone call as a freshman in college that Whitney Houston was on the radio singing my song. Okay. So
Talk about it.
Yeah, so that was my intro into the business. You know, I almost could have lost my copyright in publishing, but thank the Lord, I had all of my works registered and was able to get my publishing, which just literally helped me evolve into where I am today. So I'm grateful, and that was my moment for sure.
You guys are all so accomplished. It's really motivating to even be a part of this panel with you all. So thank you for sharing that, Tami. Let's get into some of that journey and into some of the deeper details of what it took to get to where you guys are now. Can you share a specific experience where you felt your race or gender had an impact on your music career, and how did you navigate that situation? Tami, you want to go first?
Sure. You know, I was always the girl in the room with a lot of guys. And so being, you know, in that type of environment kind of forces you to, you know, not necessarily be on the defense, but definitely want to have a dominant presence because, you know, you will get tried as a woman in the business, whether it's for your looks or even for your intelligence. So luckily, I was an athlete, you know, very competitive, always, you know, just willing to do what I have to do as far as working hard. And so I allowed me working hard to be, you know, what I brought in the room with me. And that's what usually kept me there. So, you know, I was able to kind of navigate in that way and always maintain my professionalism, of course, and kind of set the record straight that I'm here to work and that's it. But yeah, that has been, you know, what I had to deal with in the past.
It's so important for us, you know, in this male dominated industry to assert our power in those spaces, right? Because there aren't so many of us there. And if there is a balance between teetering the line between friendliness and over friendliness, right? And so what about you, Stephanie?
I would say kind of in the same thing as Tami. I found myself in a lot of rooms in college and fresh out of college with a lot of men creators. And I knew I was in that room also because I was a female. So I knew that's what got me in the room. And I was aware of that, but I used that as my leverage to know, okay, I can get in the room this way, but once I'm in here, then I can take that to another level and show what I can do. And so I have found that helped. Now when I moved, that was in LA. When I moved to Nashville, I definitely had to negotiate being a woman in this town because you don't have a lot of women in writers' rooms, a lot of women creating, there's very few Black women that are just songwriters in this town. Usually they have to write their own songs. So I found myself being like, okay, that's not going to get me into the door the same way. Right. So I was lucky to have those years that I had built up a catalog of what I could do. And I had to use that to get into the room because being a woman and being Black was not going to get me into any room in Nashville. A different world than LA or Atlanta.
But it's good that you found that balance and you found that space for yourself to use your voice in a, you know, where you're not predominantly afforded that opportunity. And I'll say, you know, from my experience as a woman of color in the tech space, there aren't a lot of us here. And there's always that element of like feeling, you know, that people might think you're incompetent or that you're having to overprove yourself or, you know, putting extra hours over your peers just to be visible. What about you, Latashá?
Yeah, I've kind of been in both worlds of the tech and the music space, but in the music space, some of the things that I was witnessing or just experiencing was as a woman rapper, my body was always in judgment and commodification. Oftentimes my PR team was like pushing like pills on me so I could lose weight. And my writing teams were telling me to write more sexual lyrics and things of that nature. And when I didn't, and I would push back, I often was called like an angry Black woman or, you know, something that I just didn't feel like I wanted to be. And then as for the tech space, especially in crypto and Web3, is highly white, rich, male dominated. And so I'm walking into the room with my blonde hair and my long nails and all of me. And oftentimes they're like, who is this girl? And why is she here? But I think the beauty of being in those spaces is that it changes the mindsets of so many people. And when I walk into a space and I'm who I am, oftentimes I get a lot of respect because I come in as myself. I also get a lot of moments where people don't want to talk to me, and that's okay too. I don't want to talk to them either. But I've come to the point where it's like, if I'm not invited to your party, I didn't need to be there. I want to make my own party, you know?
I think that is so important to know, like to stand in your truth, right? Like you all bring something to the table that's different. Every single one of us is presenting ourselves as authentic and with a certain level of skill and experience. So the thing that you have the confidence to show up as your full authentic self, because I think that's part of the challenge too, right? Like, how much can people really take before it becomes a microaggression in the room, or, you know, so let's move on. So how do you believe the industry can foster more opportunities for Black songwriters, both in terms of representation and access to resources? Latashá, you want to take this one?
Can you repeat that one more time? I was reading another question that was in the chat.
Sure, no problem. How do you believe the industry can foster more opportunities for Black songwriters in terms of representation and access?
I think it's just a step in bringing people into the room. I think that is like the main key. Inviting talent, not being afraid of talent. I think oftentimes what I've witnessed was a lot of fear, a lot of capping and boxing talent because of what the industry standard of music was at a time, right? I remember when I was starting my rap career, and all that was like hyped was sexualized, like real sexy women, et cetera, girls who weren't saying like deeper things. And then I watched the transition of that in the last couple of years, like with a Rico Nasty, with a Megan Thee Stallion, with all these different women coming up. And I'm like, yeah, we could just break the box, and allowing people that break the box to come into the studio sessions with you, allowing them into the rooms is, I think, the best thing that we could start to do and foster into most of this writing camp work and things like that.
That's amazing.
I know on my end, I've already, that's what Mezzo does. We foster opportunities for writers and producers all the time, mainly because once I got signed to my first publishing deal in 2002, I was signed to EMI after the Whitney Houston placement under Big John Platt. I was kind of put in this world that was like the major world. And so that left a lot of independent creators that I created with, that I was friends with, kind of out of the loop of what I was working on. And so sometimes I would be like, oh, well, come to a session, and try to get them in on the work, but not all the time was that welcomed. And so since we are an independent music administration agency, we are always shopping opportunities, shopping our catalog. And like even recently, I was just sending an email to one of the clients that we just recently plugged a song for one of Issa Rae's projects that she has with HBO. And when I looked at all of the quote requests that came in from everything that we submitted, I was like, oh my God, we've helped like over 10 writers and producers, get on board and created an opportunity to have their songs placed in this actual show. So, and that's what it's all about, right? Is creating the opportunity. I'm just, I don't have that type of time to wait for anyone to do something or create something for me. I'm going to, take it by the reins and, create what we need when I know the need is there and there's no one else stepping up to the plate. And so, that's what Mezzo prides ourselves on. We're always empowering songwriters and producers, educating them, and of course, supporting them in every way that, they're just underserved and they're underserved and not getting the support that they should have been getting, especially knowing how much of our music, especially as African Americans, as Black Americans, is being used, exploited, and so forth. But there's a very, very small piece of representation and support that we're getting from the music industry as a whole.
Beautifully said, Tami.
Yes.
Jen,
Thank you.
you said something that really resonated with me. I think everyone on this panel has created opportunity out of their own issues, right? Like solving your own problems in service to other people as well. So just by way of you creating your agency, you're offering opportunities and resources to people who may not have access to that. And then Latashá, you being present in a space where we're not predominantly in, being able to assert, your ability to bring something new to the table, right? And to say that we're not a monolith in sound and image. And it's definitely, obviously, like in the country music space and just in general, in the pop space as well, because I know you write pop music as well. How have you seen this space kind of embraced you as a Black female songwriter? Or what have you had to do in order for that to happen?
I've had to quit playing the game that is Nashville because it doesn't work for me and for my skin color and for being a female. It just doesn't work the same way as if I was a white cis man. Like I can't do the same thing. And it took me a while to realize that and to realize what I bring to the table and to stand up for myself in a room. I remember when I first started writing here, people would ask, like, what do you know about country? Because I'm from California. I'm like, yes, my family is from the South, but country is, the instrumentation was brought over on slave ships. Like, I'm like, we created this genre and the genre is about storytelling. And I realized unless I tell my story in this genre, we don't have our story here. And my story doesn't have to be necessarily about beer and tractors and all the cliche country things. It could just be my story. And it's just as valid as somebody that came from Alabama or somebody that is from Nashville naturally. And I had to stand up and say that. And I had to believe it. I had to be like, this is where I am. And it led to a lot of uncomfortable rights. It led to a lot of, like, the phone did not ring for a while, but I just kept writing and I still just keep writing. And kind of like what Latashá said, like, I know what is for me is for me. And if you're not asking me to be at a right, that's okay. Cause I probably don't want to be there. I will create the music that I want to hear and that I want this genre to be. And so sometimes that means I'm writing with the same people, but they're awesome people. So, and the lucky thing is,
find
since
your
I'm
tribe,
independent,
you know.
it is.
You
And
find
since
your
I'm independent,
people.
yeah, I'm independent.
Sorry.
So I don't get booked on rights that I don't want to be on. I create the rights I want to be on. I don't have to just write a song for the sake of meeting my quota. I can write the song I want to write. And yes, I might not get as many cuts or as many opportunities, but I'll also push my opportunities further because I believe in them, because those are all I got. And so I find that to be how I survive.
Pivotal advice for songwriters coming into the game, you know, knowing your place, finding your lane, and, you know, challenging the status quo, you know. Can you guys share any instances where you face stereotypes or biases? It's something that we talk about on my podcast, a lot of tropes and, you know, different stigmas that are attached to being a Black woman, let alone a Black female songwriter. And how did you overcome those things? How did you maintain your creative vision?
I could go into that world because as a woman rapper, I'm always put into some sort of box often. I'm always kind of coined badass, or, you know, like, give me that badass rap, Tosh, or give me that hardcore, or, you know, like things like that. And I'm just like, I don't always want to rap like that, you know? And being in hip hop, I feel like it's just so about the extremities of people, right? Like, you're either this kind of rapper or that kind of rapper. And it's very hard to show up as like just all of the things that you could be, right? Sometimes I want to be vulnerable and open and offer that. But a lot of times, especially in sync worlds, you're witnessing people want that braggadocious rap, or you witnessing somebody say, like, I don't want you to rap like too soft or something of that nature. And I've definitely witnessed that. And I think as a Black woman, I'm often targeted for like being too angry or being too like hard, or being, you know, like the B word. I don't know if I could curse here, but being B word and all of that. Just because I assert myself the way I do and tell people that I want to be in all of my feelings and all the dimensions of myself as a woman. But it's back to what Steph says. It's about how you push yourself in that and the directions that you really want to be in.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's this delicate line between being like the aggressor, you know, even if that's not necessarily what you're intending to do, but also that level of softness that we're not afforded a lot of times, right? Because there is no safety net when things don't go the way that we want them to go for us, and we have to kind of show up in that way. So what about you, Tami? How do you feel about, you know, racial stereotypes and overcoming those in the songwriting?
I, for the most part, participated in hip hop and R&B and gospel. So majority of my counterparts were Black males. Such a small group of Black women that are creators. And I know now it's way more, but back in the day, it was very, very minimal. As it pertains to, you know, dealing with race and things like that, I think, you know, unfortunately, we've gotten so conditioned as being the minority that even when we do walk into a room, there's automatically, the expectation to make sure that, we deliver, because we want to be, a part of it. We want to be included. We want to, have inclusivity. So, so I've just kind of been, as dominant as I could be without being, like you said, aggressive or defensive. But I've always just let my work speak for itself. I don't get offended when people say certain things or have stereotypes and things like that, because that is just from their perspective and from their view, right? But I think it's our responsibility to, through our work, to show our intelligence also in creativity, but also in business. And that has always paired well for me when I'm in the room. So I never have allowed that to stop me from being great. And I teach the same thing, and I mentor my writers and producers and industry professionals that I work with to think the same way. Because what I don't want us to do is walk around with always a chip on our shoulder as if we have to, be in this energy, when really this is fun. Like, writing songs, collaborating, it started off as a very fun thing for me when I was just a young girl in Houston, Texas, and didn't have a lot of people that wrote R&B in the genre that was dominated in Houston was more hip hop and rap, like the Ghetto Boys and things like that. So it was just fun to me, and it was a dream, and it was something that I wanted to do because I was an artist. And so that type of energy it's really what I like to stay in. And I just, it keeps all of the other ideas and issues that we deal with, that we know we are plagued with. It keeps that to the side so we can really focus on working and making quality songs. And then, once the placements come and once the phone calls are ringing in, then, you're proving everybody wrong, whatever those stereotypes were, whatever those tropes were. And so I just like to keep it that way. I really, really like to focus, not negating what we deal with, but I'm very cautious about what I put my energy into, because at the end of the day, no matter what color you are, a great song is a great song, period.
I love that. Is exactly right. And I'm curious too, like all of you are artists as well, so your songwriting is also coming from a very personal place. But what happens when you're tasked to write for other women of color, and there's a certain image or certain quality of sound that people want to hear, but you see something more in that artist than maybe what everyone else sees. I'm curious how you address that challenge as well. Do you offer some, changes to the lyrics to reflect a different side, or do you, make suggestions?
I think depending on who you're writing for, every writer, every songwriter, producer should always study the talent that they're writing for. Now, sometimes you're not even privy to who the song will place with, right? You're just creating, and you don't know what your A&R or your publisher is who they're going to pitch to. And we all know, sometimes you can intentionally write it for someone else, but then it ends up on a whole other project or with a whole other artist that maybe you didn't even intend for it to land. That's happened to me. Like, I wrote a song for Brandy. The intention was to write for her with the producers. I was with Soul Shock and Carlin. We had this whole plan about this record. I was 5 months pregnant. I was in a rush trying to get done. And they were like, Tami, I know you've been here with us for 2 weeks. We need one more. We're trying to land something for Brandy. So of course, I, wrote what I assumed in her sound that I've studied over the years and working with LaShawn, rest in peace, LaShawn Daniels, and just being in the room with so many people who have collaborated with her and helped to develop her sound. But unfortunately, she was not able to record the record because of some personal issues at the time. And Ron Fair heard the record, and it ended up, being transformed with an orchestra and everything, and landed on Keisha Cole's album. It was a song called Falling Out that I wrote on the Just Like You album. And so sometimes you're not even granted the opportunity to make corrections or say, you know what, well, I'm gonna pitch it this way to this person. You just really have to focus on quality and, structure and, great melodies and a story. And I think that is what has been my focus. But to answer your question, if I have been posed with an opportunity to be able to, write for a particular person with a different style, sometimes I will bring in other co-writes if it's just not my thing. I have no problem with finding someone and saying, hey, you know what, I think you have, a dope, way of delivery when it comes down to rap, or I know that you write a little bit more heavier with the masculine tone. So let me bring you in, and that way we can collaborate together, because that doesn't mean that I still can't be involved. I'm collaborating in a much safer space, knowing that we're getting closer to what that artist could possibly be looking for, and,
major
enough money out there
there.
for everybody. So, why not?
Exactly.
Amen.
And I think you spoke, it's like right on target. It's a collaborative effort when it comes to songwriting. So the burden doesn't necessarily fall on you to change
Not all the
the
time. No,
narrative.
absolutely.
But on the same, in the same token, I'm curious, is there a responsibility that we have, as songwriters to address, some of the unrest in society? Like how much of a responsibility is it for us to, make sure the right stories are being told, on behalf of a group of people. Definitely, I know you do some work on that end with the activism. And why don't you talk about that a little bit?
I do. I host a podcast called Jacques Talk that, and we talk about this. And mainly, I chose not to talk about it because I necessarily always wanted to, but because I think being in Nashville and being in the South and in the country space, it is necessary to speak out and then to create opportunities where people can become co-conspirators and allies. So it doesn't just fall on me or the 10 Black country artists to always speak about it. I put out a song that was called Because of That in 2020, and it landed on CMT. The whole music video only had Black bodies in it. It was created for Black bodies. It was not created for the white mainstream country music audience. And I thought that was important to be able to tell my story so that they could understand where I'm coming from. But in the same regard, I also believe it's not my job to just deal with my pain so that you understand it. I don't need to tell my painful story every time for you to give me empathy or for you to feel like, okay, I get it. Like, that's not my job. My job is to live my life and to live in my joy. And I'm not always crying, and I'm not always depressed, and I'm not always all these things that are expected that you would think we would be with the way our society is. But you need to see the whole version of me. And some of y'all need to speak out, who have huge platforms in country music or any other, and speak out about what you are also seeing. I can introduce it, and then you need to take the lead. That's how I feel about it.
I think that's perfectly said. Also, there's something to be said about songs that speak to what's going on in society too, right? Like we have Juneteenth coming up on the 19th. And I believe maybe last year or the year before, Beyonce released Black Parade as a way to kind of empower the community and show like through the lyrics of our songs, we can promote Black businesses, and things like that. I feel like there's a way to kind of move the needle forward through our music and through the lyrics. How do you feel about that, Sasha?
I think for me, music has a twofold work. I think definitely in some cases, music is always activism because you're activating things within the soul and within people. And then on the other side, I think music could just be to be, right? And so I'm constantly doing this with music because I'm like, do I want to activate? Do I want to go crazy on this right now and really, really give it? Or am I just trying to, let it be? And I think that's also the magic of music, right? Like when we're in moments like we've been in, especially in existence right now, so much is pouring out of us so easily because we're living constantly in a stimulating world that there's way too much going on every day, right? And so it offers so much to the songwriter. But I think it's back to what Stephanie said as well. We don't have to be in one case, right? Everything, as a songwriter, I think you just have to be within yourself and what your truth is. And sometimes I felt like as a songwriter in some of the rooms that I've been in, it's kind of this enforcement of what is happening in the world that I have to write about those things, especially when I was doing a lot of sync writing. People would be like, Juneteenth's coming, or, this holiday's coming. What can you write to empower? And I'm just like, is that realistic? Is that like truly where good music comes from? I think the best music comes from your truth and where you are in your center. And so when I've been in rooms where they're like, yeah, we got to write for this holiday, and I'm like, I'm not really in the holiday spirit right now. So what are we going to do? Can we write something else? And I think a good songwriter knows how to take those moments and transform them to their deepest truth. And so that's a lot of the work that I do with songwriting in those kind of time periods.
I agree too. And I also wanted to add that, it shouldn't just be the responsibility of us. Where are our allies that understand the issues that our race has been dealing with currently and has dealt with, and where is the collaboration and support from them as creatives to be able to say, hey, I'm working on a few ideas as an ally. I understand what your community goes through. Let's collaborate together. So I would just like to see more of that. I don't think it's fair for it to just always be us. I mean, history has shown, from your Marvin Gaye's to your Stevie, like you mentioned, Beyonce, Public Enemy, like we've already done that. We've already been a voice, and we will continue to be a voice, but it should not always be our responsibility. We 100% need support from our allies who understand the complexities and the injustices that, our community has had to deal with in this country.
It's mentally exhausting to take on the responsibility of all of that, especially when you're the one undergoing through all of those things.
It's unfair.
Help us out. You see what we're going through. How can you use your resources and privileges to equal the scales for us, to balance the playing field? So I think you're right. It's equally everyone else's responsibility to take on the messaging and the drastic changes that we actually need in this business.
I just wanted to add one note. I just really want us to get away from trauma art, right? I feel like we've lived in that space of trauma art for way too long. It's deteriorating for the Black soul, and it becomes like this wash set, right? Like we're watching the corporation be like, yeah, write about your pain. And then we write more about our pain, and then we get into more depression. And it's just this terrible cycle that's happening to the Black creative because we're enforced to write about our traumas constantly. It happens in all industries too. Like, I watch the movie industry constantly want to just buy films that are about trauma for the Black community, right? And it's like, when are we going to get out of that time period? Let's talk about other aspects of our existences. And yeah, it's time for that for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that is such a
acknowledging,
word.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, and acknowledging those artists that are being more progressive, right? That are talking about healing, that are talking about being able to overcome, and, you know, their subject matter is a lot more positive, that is universal for everyone. And so, you know, I think that's where our energy needs to go, because people are tired. I mean, after the pandemic, everybody was exhausted anyway, but on top of what we as Blacks already have to endure, I'm just like, look, we all need some good music at this point. That's what the networks should be asking for. That's what the production studios should be asking for. That's what we're ready to produce. So 100%, let's, you know, get behind and support all of those creatives who are really rallying for more healing and more positive based music.
I'm here for a compilation of feel-good music by Black female songwriters. You know,
Look at you.
I think the world
Let's
needs
do
more
it.
of that. You know,
Okay.
'cause especially in this like activism lane that I'm in, and producing a research study about intersectionality, about doing a podcast and having this nonprofit. I'm realizing that we don't want to center all of our energy into this trauma, like you said. We don't want to be this like bearer of bad news all the time. It's like, okay, there's also excitement and happiness and joyfulness in our lives on a daily basis as well. And how do we express that in a way that other people can receive it and support
Absolutely.
it? I think that's the part that's missing, is the support, to your point about the allyship. So let's go there. You know, the industry is trying to create more of a restorative balance as it relates to paying songwriters more fairly. What's your experience been like? Has there been pay disparities that you've noticed? You know, maybe your white counterparts being offered opportunities and better paid than you, and how do you navigate that?
I can start. I haven't necessarily been in a place where I know I am being paid less, but I can say I've been in rooms where I have not been paid, and I didn't know. I was not gifted with the knowledge in the beginning to know about my publishing, to know about split sheets, to know things. So I was in rooms where I was contributing, and then I'd hear a song come out. I'd be like, I was there and I'm not on it. Or my background vocals are on, that I sang for the demo, are now on the final produced track. And Tiffany Red speaks about it a lot. Like, she runs the 100%ers. Like, I was like, I don't know if you're doing this across the board, or if it's my being green and naive. But am I being green and naive because you're not giving Black songwriters, and there's not people I can talk to, especially when I first started, other Black songwriters that I could be like, is this happening to you? Is this happening to you? I needed the Mezzo agency back then to understand what was happening. And now I am just very about my business, and I'm very about saying, I deserve just as much as you deserve. And luckily in the country music space, it is a pretty equal game once you're in the room. It's just not equal getting in the room. But once you're in the room, you're going to get paid. It's just finding your spot in that room, which is kicking a few doors down.
Just the access portion, right? Like just being able to have those relationships and to be in the space that other folks are in. And Tami, you can probably relate. You know, I think rights and royalty management is convoluted by design. You know, it's meant to keep certain people out of that ecosystem and away from the opportunity. And so being that you're an expert in that space, you know, it's fulfilling, and I can speak from the tech side, it's fulfilling to know that you're creating something that other people can now make money from, you know, and have access to it. Latashá, you're, you know, coming from a space from the Web3 space, right? Where blockchain, it's transparency. So now there are no gatekeepers. You know, if you want to know where your royalties are going, if you want to know where the rights holders are, you know, that's a avenue that can be explored for Black and Brown songwriters. So what about you guys? How do you feel about the pay disparity? What can be done to create more equity for Black songwriters monetarily?
So I'm also an advocate for the Recording Academy. I'm the co-chair of the advocacy committee here at the Recording Academy in Atlanta, and I also was just elected as vice president as well of the chapter. And so one of the issues that, of course, I hope everyone is familiar with the Music Modernization Act, with making sure that that was passed, which in 2018, it was signed off on. But there were so many other bills, Phono Records 3, Phono Records 4, that were, where those royalties were held. And thankfully, for the MLC and our partnership with them, we've been able to recover those unclaimed royalties, particularly for our songwriters and producers that are Black. And so, and of course, we don't just have Black clients, but specifically because I was aware of the issues, I was aware of the bills and the royalties that were on hold. And I was at the advocacy meetings with legislation and, even met with Congressman John Lewis before he left about the importance of, songwriters getting paid. So being involved and also knowing the facts has helped me to be able to empower other songwriters and producers who had no clue that that money was sitting, and so I'll never forget one of my first clients reached out to me and he was like, hey, he was just a prospect at first, just like, hey, I found you on YouTube. I'm only making money from BMI, and I think I'm supposed to be making more. And I'm like, oh my God, let me start doing my research. And then upon, doing some further investigation, he had produced 2 platinum albums. We found $80,000 for him unclaimed that he didn't know he had. And so that literally created.
That's not a little bit of change.
That's not.
Thousands, tens of thousands of dollars sitting there.
Especially not living in New Jersey, right? So, so we were able to help identify and, match those royalties and get him paid. And, it just gave me so much fulfillment knowing that, I was able to be a blessing to another creative who had no clue because he's just not able or have the access or the ability to understand at that time what all royalties were out there that were unclaimed and the access to be able to claim it. And so that's what we've led with that, making sure that when clients come to us, we assess their catalogs for free. We give them a free assessment. We also do an estimate if we do find, and we do identify that there are some royalties out there, just so we can have a realistic view. And then we also go through that 7 checkpoint system with them and provide them with their own royalty portal. They're able to see their royalties as they're coming in and when they're getting paid. And so I just think the more we do that and empower them to not think just from a creative aspect, but also encourage them to evolve. It's time to also get that other side of your brain activated. You don't have to know everything, but by all means, please understand the basics. I think it makes for a great relationship and pairing between administrators and publishers and their writers and producers, because now there's a bit of trust there, knowing that, hey, they were looking out for me. They gave me information that I just otherwise wouldn't have had. And so that's how we're leading the charge every day with advocacy, and all the other events that, that I'm a part of.
You're literally doing the Lord's work, right?
I was going to say, I'm about to hit up Tami right now, right after this panel. This is incredible.
To have access to services that will enable them to claim royalties out there. And I think, as an artist, you want to focus on the craft of creating music. You may not necessarily have the wherewithal to be a business person, which more and more there's tools for them to be like that, to be a business person as well, but to be able to rely on someone like yourself that has those resources can kind of walk them through the process and show them where they might not been aware of revenue opportunities. And in terms of revenue opportunities, I want you, Latashá, to speak on, the sources of revenue in the spaces that, we're not normally privy to.
Yeah, I just want to commend Tami for this work first, because honestly, that was some of the hardest parts of my journey as a creative, knowing where to get my money from. And till this day, there's still places that I know that money is holding for me. And I'm like, girl, we got to find this money. I got you, Tami. But also I think for me, I'm a writer, obviously, but I also am an artist. So like, I always have like millions of things I'm focusing on at once. And I just wanted to figure out like, how can I streamline this as much as possible? And how do I make it simpler, right? For myself and my communities that just want to support me. And when I found Web3 and blockchain, I realized like, oh my gosh, this is like a beautiful opportunity for me to show all of the parts of myself, show like my music, my visuals, my performance art, everything that I do through minting my content. Minting means posting, for folks who don't know what minting means, but posting my content onto blockchain. And my journey started in February of 2021. I minted music videos. That was my thing. Like, I love music videos. I believe that they're a lost art because of the industry. And I just started minting my music videos. My first music video sold in 3 minutes, and that paid my rent in Los Angeles. And y'all know that Los Angeles rent is no joke, right?
It ain't cheap. It
Ain't cheap. So I was like, okay. I was really excited about that. And then I just kept going with that journey. I started minting music on different platforms. There are platforms like Catalog Works, Sound XYZ. Of course, my platform called ZORA is really incredible too. And I'm very grateful to be working there because they give you all of these places and all types of mediums of art that you could put onto their platforms. And then there's just this amazing community in Web3 that genuinely cares about art and artists and music and want to see artists prevail. And so where I like am supported by so many investors, like actual investors that care about art, actual people that want to put into artists and things of that nature. And you know how they always say you should find your first 1,000 people, and those people will like support you in your career. So like, say if you have 1,000 fans, that's going to be how you get supported in your career. I believe that through Web3, I have found my first 1,000 fans that really dedicate themselves to me. Every time I mint something, they're going for it and buying it. And like I said, in the summer, I literally made what a record deal would have given me in a summer. And I think just
That's
not
really
to talk
nice.
numbers. Yeah, I think not to talk numbers, but I've made like almost $500,000 just off of Web3. And that
Wow.
changed my existence, you know?
Yeah,
It,
that's
it,
that's no chump change right there.
yeah,
That's a
that's
big
not
chunk of
chump
change.
change. And it
Yeah,
also
yeah.
allows me to support other people that I care about, other musicians that work with me, songwriters, right? Like a lot of times songwriters are just doing it off of the strength for an upcoming artist like me. And now I'm like, oh, actually, I could pay you for doing this work with me, you know, producers, et cetera, et cetera. And I have become, like Tami was saying, my own startup and business in that sense, because now I have my own world that I'm building for revenue streams, right? And I believe
But
what
that
Tami was
said, oh, I'm
oh,
so
go
sorry.
ahead.
Because
It's
we are
okay.
wrapping up soon,
Oh, I'm so
but I
sorry.
do want no. We congratulate you because this is it's amazing that you're in this space. You know, there's not a lot of folks that look like us in this space and that are as successful as you are. So the fact that you're pioneering there, like we could go on for
Yeah.
days, you know, talking about it. But I do, before we wrap up and take some questions, I wanted to get just from each of you a piece of advice for upcoming songwriters and what you're working on right now to make a difference in the world.
I can start. My advice for a songwriter is really easy. Just write, because you have to create to then create great songs, and great songs are the songs that people buy. Great songs are the ones that artists want and can make their own. So the more you can create with, the more people you can create with to find your writing style. Because then, like Tami has said, you'll know who to collaborate with or when you need to bring somebody else in to the song to get the right outcome. And that is all I can say. And it's fun. And
what are you up to these days? Where can we find you, and where can we listen to your music?
My music's on all the platforms, you know, the Spotify's, the Titles. I'm listening on Tidal. But You can find me on IG, all my platforms. It's I am Steph Jacques. And I'm putting out a single next month with Sir the Baptist and crossing over genres out of country into soul music, which I am excited about. A whole new sound to try to like just find a whole new audience. And yeah, I'm gonna ride that wave and talk to these ladies about finding my money and all my sources.
Exactly.
And making more
Starts
money.
with us.
Making more, please.
What about you, Tim?
Oh my God, it's royalty season for us. So we are doing reporting. We are under our rock and are not really doing anything but making sure that writers and producers that are on our roster will be getting paid end of month. But we do have a lot on the table right now from, tons of licenses that we're clearing. We work directly with this company called Versa and Zeus to handle all of their licensing and placement. So we're creating more opportunities and, placing more songs for writers and producers in their shows. And then of course, in Paramount, MGM and all that stuff. But we definitely are going to be having some workshops coming up. We try to do them every quarter called Creators Night. And that's when we invite creators from all over Atlanta to come and meet with other songwriters and producers and learn about Mezzo and just kind of create some type of networking opportunity for them and, kind of play back their music and just kind of vibe out and just let it be a real kickback. But I also have several advocacy efforts in between. So I just recommend everyone just follow me on my Instagram at Tami LaTrell. I'm on all social media at Tami LaTrell anyway. But that'll be the best way to kind of keep up and also follow the Mezzo agency on all social media as well to see everything that we have coming up.
Awesome. And Latashá, advice and where can we find you and what you're working on right now?
I'll just follow up with what everybody was saying. Just write, just keep creating. Collaboration is also a beautiful way to get more involved in the writing world, and getting to know people that are outside of the box is something I often give. What I am working on right now is my next album. So I'm heads down in my project right now all summer. I'm also bringing back my educational portal for Web3 and blockchain called Zoratopia. It's just to school people on what Web3 is, getting involved and understanding the evolution of the internet and digital assets and creative economies. So that's what I'm working on right now and really excited about it.
Well, I'm checking to see whether or not we have any time for questions. I'm not exactly sure. We're close to the end. All right, let's do a couple. Candace Weatherall asks, how long did it take for you all to build your confidence to assert yourself? And what did asserting yourself look like in the studio, in business meetings, etc.? Rapid fire answer.
I would say
Go ahead.
the more I was in it, the more my confidence grew. And when you believe in yourself, like, and I know it sounds like cliche and cheesy, but if I'm in the studio and I have an idea, I'm going to share it, because every idea might lead to another idea, which leads to another idea. And I've just learned, if I'm in that room, I'm supposed to be in that room. So say what I'm going to say.
Co-sign that. That is absolutely right. And you deserve to be in that room too. Show up, knowing that you're special and that you bring something unique to the table.
Exactly.
Billy Davis asked, would you take the opportunity to collaborate with Black male songwriters? My thoughts are you probably already have in some capacity or other, right? So yeah, I would assume so. Wilhelmina Wells asks, would you be willing to share admin advice? I'm a songwriter producer and it's just starting in the admin space. Tami, I guess that's for you.
Yeah, that's a very that's a specialized answer. I will say this though, administration is not just royalty collection. It has a lot to do with managing the rights, organizing catalog, understanding metadata, and it's very, 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 it requires a strong attention to detail. I definitely don't knock any songwriters or producers if they would like to self-administer, but I will say this, there is a lot of language that you also need to know. And unfortunately, some pay sources only want to work with admins. So establishing yourself and getting acquainted with other administrators and publishers that can help teach you about the language so that you are able to, navigate the terrain better, I think would be what the focus should be if it is that you're trying to get into the admin space, because it really is another world outside of creativity.
He said, reach out to the Mezzo agency for assistance with that. And Wendell Jackson asked a question. Sorry for the background noise, everyone. After observing a lot of injustice and becoming an ally to women, is there a general organization where one could go to be connected to women creators and business people, to pull from the pool, to collaborate with? Well, let me take this one. I'll shameless plug here. As chairwoman and founder of Juke Joint Foundation, we're a nonprofit organization aimed at providing resources to women of color in the music industry via scholarships, grants, and access to music visibility events. We recognize that the lack of resources and relationships and opportunity prevent us, yes, Wendell Jackson, Juke Joint Foundation, prevents us from being able to elevate in this game and to also bring each other up. So Juke Joint Foundation also offers mentorship, networking opportunities. We have a job board focused on pay transparency so people know how to advocate for themselves for better pay. And it also is a uniform way for the industry to have access to vetted, qualified business professionals, because a lot of folks will say they don't know where to find us and we're already in the room. So now there's no excuse. Juke Joint Foundation you can find at jukejointfoundation.org. And as far as me, you can find me at Pub Royalty Queen on Instagram, pubroyaltyqueen.com, freshandsassy.com. I want to thank again the panelists for their beautiful presence today and their advice and all the wonderful insight that they were able to share with us. And thank you for the MLC and Day for putting on this Black Music Month edition for the ladies. Thank you all.